Hello and welcome. This is Henzaisuru, and I was told by multiple people this week that I ought to start from the basics and really just kind of go back to the fundamentals of both playing WoW and WindWalker Monk, because just rushing straight into endgame content was a little bit overwhelming for some viewers. All right, so I'm excited to present this to you then. Just this one will be part one, which will just be a basic overview of what all new Windwalker monks, as well as all new players, just some things you ought to know. Okay, so I leveled a guy up to level 10, just so that we get a good overview of everything, and kind of a good cross-section of, what you can do, choices you can make. It's level 10s when things kind of branch off into more significant choices. So I thought it was a good cross section. So, your just general hotkeys that you're going to be rolling with. C opens your character menu. B opens and closes your bag. If you want to compare gear against what you're currently wearing to see if maybe it's a little bit better than what you're wearing, see what some upgrades are, you hold down Shift and you mouse over that item. So right now, in my bag, I have a item level 12 versus an item level 9. I have a rare versus an uncommon. So 9 times out of 10, the rare is going to be better. I look at how much DPS it is. Yes, it's a DPS increase. What about the stats? Are the stats an increase? Yes, it has critical strike and versatility. So as far as stats go for Windwalker monks, you want to be rolling versatility as your number one stat, followed by mastery, critical strike, and haste is last. So right now I know this has my best stat on it, two of my best stats on it actually, and it has more DPS and it's a higher rarity grade. So this hands down is better. So I will equip that by doing one of two things. Either I can right click it, or if I want to manually equip it, which you'll often do for things that come in groups of two. So like, say for example, rings, trinkets, and dual-wield weapons, sometimes you'll need to manually do it. Otherwise, right-clicking it will just send it to the first slot instead of the second. What I mean by that is, say for example, I'm dual-wielding. If I were to right-click this, it'll get sent to my main hand slot instead of the offhand. So in that case, I would need to drag this over to your offhand slot and drop it, but I don't have dual wield yet. Same thing goes for rings, so it'll just end up kind of replacing it. So at least that's how it used to be, and it's definitely still that way with dual wielding. And then over here you can overview your gear. Your item level is posted here, so that's your general strength of your gear, if you will. The stats on your gear are listed here, and like I said, we're going for versatility, mastery, crit, and haste. You get mastery at level 10, so that's when that starts to get important. Your main stat is going to be agility, so it's going to be agility and stamina. They're just going to be the main baseline stats. So agility, stamina, agility, stamina, agility, stamina. And that's, you wear leather. Whereas, like, say, a paladin might be mail and then plate, or a mage will be always cloth. But you wear leather as a monk. So another important thing to note that new players have a challenge with is look at your bag size. So when I mouse over here, I see mine's going to look a little different because I have an add-on for it, so it groups them all together for me. But I mouse over here and I see this is a 6-slot bag. This is a 6-slot, 10-slot, and an 8-slot. And I'm like, okay, so I've got a few that are a little bit behind. Do I have anything from these quests that gave me a better bag? Or if I loot a better bag, is it better than the one I have equipped? So I look at it and, okay, you got a 12-slot bag just sitting in one of my bags not being used. So you want to drag that over one of your 6-slot bags, or in this case, you could really do any of them. It's an upgrade for all of them because it's larger than any. And then it's automatically posted there for you. The important part about the important part about that is you need to make sure that the bag that you're replacing is empty first, because if there's anything in it, it will not let you swap it out. Okay, so that aside, we went over stats, we went over gearing. So you got your trinket slots here, ring slots, and then all the rest is fairly self-explanatory. This tab is for your reputations. So this will be how much work you've put towards a certain group, a certain faction. And through that you can get certain items, you can get certain discounts, you can get certain things unlocked. It just depends on what that particular reputation offers. Some are more important than others, depends what you want to do. Up here, you have your titles. So over the years, I've earned plenty of them. So, you know, Elder Sifu Smash. All right, and then Equipment Manager. This is if you want to make certain groups of equipment, like say you can program your tanking gear, your healing gear, and your DPS gear so that it's ready for you just on one click. So it's really good for that. This is an add-on that I run called Pawn, and you can compare gear with it. So say, let's see, I'm not 100% sure why it's, there we go. Oh, because I have not selected a spec yet, so it was a little bit confused. All right. So Monk Windwalker, so if I were to compare this item against the one I currently have equipped, it decisively tells me exactly why it's the better item and by how much. So it's significantly better. It's a 57% upgrade, this item from this item. So it makes life very easy. It's Pawn, P-A-W-N, makes life pretty streamlined. All right. Then, as a monk, our main focus, aside from those stats I told you, is you are a high mobility, fairly squishy, high DPS class that focuses on cleave. So I would call you a burst class, but you're really not. Marksman hunters are a burst class. Subtlety rogue, fire mage. You don't, as a Windwalker monk, sure you do have burst windows, however, you also have a very nice, steady DPS, especially in cleave and multi-target situations, using things like Whirling Dragon Punch and Dance of Chi-Ji, and Spinning Crane Kick. Dance of Chi-Ji would be the talent that buffs it. And then not to mention our stun is also AoE. So it makes for a very strong cleave build that monks can pull off. However, we are very squishy, so we need to rely on our mobility more than our healing and more than our defensives, because our defensives are limited. And our healing is also somewhat limited since it's down to 2. I don't know if I'm going to count Chi Wave as a third healing ability. It's just a little boost up, but I would not count on it. But Expel Harm and your Vivify are your 2 primary heals. But to make use of them, you need to get some distance and to get them off to begin with. Okay, so just starting out, my favorite, let's select Windwalker. Mistweaver is a little bit undertuned right now, and Brewmaster is actually doing pretty well. So by selecting this, we get our Mastery and we get our Rising Sun Kick. So just right off the bat, I'm going to start configuring things how I like. So I'm going to throw Rising Sun Kick before Blackout Kick, just because it doesn't do it yet, I guess. Okay, Blackout Kick at this phase in the game does not reduce cooldowns. So for now, I'll keep it like this, just so that it's 3 chi, and then this is 2 chi, but has a cooldown, so cooldown stays to the right. But after Blackout Kick starts to be reduced down to 1 chi, and then reduces the cooldowns, I usually keep that behind my main rotation, so that can just help me reset that rotation, instead of it being in the way especially when you start to get Blackout Kick procs. You don't want to overuse them because then it'll end up messing with your Whirling Dragon Punch. Um, so at this stage in the game, right now, we don't have any. We've got limited mobility. We've got one roll. We don't have any transcendence. We don't have any slows. We don't. We've got one stun. So what you can kind of do. I mean, thanks. Okay, let's continue this way. All right. So what you can do is attack, Rising Sun Kick, attack, and this guy's not going to make this very easy. Okay, so attack, Rising Sun Kick, and I guess Rising Sun Kick just does way too much damage. Either that or this guy is just literally trolling as a troll. But anywho, all right. But yeah, Rising Sun Kick and Fists of Fury will be your two main damage abilities in your rotation. Storm Earth and Fire and Zuin will be your main damage cooldowns, and then when you choose Kyrian, Weapons of Order will also be one of your main damage cooldowns. You're going to basically do Storm Earth and Fire, Kyrian, and then you're going, after that wears off, you're going to do Storm Earth and Fire, Zuin. And that way you get two damage windows, and you can just kind of keep that nice steady DPS going on, especially you don't want to go too all in at once because then people will see that window of opportunity, stun you because you are very vulnerable to CC as a monk, especially stuns and incapacitates, sheeps, like hard CCs, and they're going to just take advantage of that and just try and nuke you and know you don't have any offensives at that point. So stagger it a little bit. All right, so some basic terminology. Single target is anything that attacks one target. Multi-target is anything that attacks more than one target. Cleave is anything that attacks any multi-target in a cone in front of you. Tanks are anything that it's a certain class that has spec'd into taking aggro and taking damage. So aggro is basically getting things to attack you. So the more aggro you have, the more something's going to attack you, or the more it's going to focus on you. And then taking damage is self-explanatory. Us monks, we do have a healing spec, and we do have a tanking spec. Healing, that's also self-explanatory. But tanking, yeah, as a brewmaster, you're a pretty good tank. It's just one of the more complicated tanking specs compared to other classes because you're taking damage and then you're basically staggering a certain percentage of that damage over the next few seconds. Then you have abilities that remove that percent. So it's a lot more consistent damage taken, so healers tend to appreciate it, but it's a little complicated to play because you're playing that percentage. But the good part is if that percentage of stagger does get high enough, you will be essentially notified to purify it off, which is to just get rid of your stacks with an ability, which is your... not listed here, but I believe it should be your Purifying Brew. And then Mistweaver, they do need to kind of step it up a little bit, but that will be your healing spec if that's what you choose to do. Okay, so we've gone over tanks, we've gone over DPS, we've gone over healing, we've gone over stats, we've gone over your primary stats, we've gone over the basics of your bag, we've gone over so your primary rotation is the abilities that you use repetitively to kill a target. Utility is anything that is not damage or healing, or essentially not damage is utility. So your stuns will be utility, your movement abilities will be utility, things of that nature. Heals are heals. And then cooldowns are pretty much anything that takes over a minute to be used again. So in this case, say we've got Blood Fury here. 2-minute cooldown, so we'll call it a cooldown, but increases your attack power by 6. So this will be a cooldown, 2-minute cooldown, so we call it a cooldown. Your Invoke Zuin, 2 minutes, it's a cooldown. And Storm Earth and Fire, 1.5 minute, it's a cooldown. Even though this can be used twice, so 1.5 minutes, it's about a 45-second, but we still call it a damage cooldown. So cooldowns are divided into 3 main categories: damage cooldowns, defensive cooldowns, and utility cooldowns. These offensive cooldown, offensive cooldown, offensive cooldown, because they increase the amount of damage you do, or maybe reduce the amount of armor. No, it basically essentially it increases the damage you do overall, in one form or another. Defensive cooldowns essentially reduce the amount of damage you take for a certain period of time, and then utility, it varies. So, like for example, I would consider a utility cooldown possibly, I'm not sure whether to call Touch of Death utility or damage. It depends on how it's being used. It really does. Usually you'd call it a damage cooldown, but I have seen certain instances where it could be used strategically. Because it doesn't necessarily always kill your target. It depends. Your Leg Sweep, definitely a very good utility cooldown. 1-minute cooldown stuns everything around you for 3 seconds. This here, Spinning Crane Kick, is going to be your bread and butter for any situation in which you're fighting something that is over 3 targets. But you also want to make sure that you've already used your Fist of Fury, get that on cooldown, and then just switch over to that being your primary chi spender. Chi are essentially your combo points if you're familiar with rogues. You accumulate them and then you spend them. You accumulate them and spend them. That's how monks work. So your main bread and butter is, I won't instant kill this thing, so I can actually show you. So you're going to essentially attack. I would do Rising Sun Kick, and then another Tiger Palm, and then Blackout Kick. And then if they're still, if I need to heal, I would back away from my target with a roll, and immediately go into a Vivify. So you have the distance it takes from your target to get from here to here, so the distance of your roll, before you start having your heal interrupted. So as you're taking damage and trying to cast, you're going to end up have it delayed. So say I try and cast a Vivify. See, it took point... Yeah, it takes 0.01 seconds longer if I get hit. See how also Touch of Death is highlighted like that? It means that your target is below the kill threshold. So, assuming it's not a boss, and in some cases it might be, it will instant kill your target if it's highlighted and below that certain HP threshold. The higher your HP is, the larger that threshold is, with the exception of PvP. So if we read it, exploits an enemy target's weakest point, instantly killing them, only usable on creatures that you less HP than you. So yeah, the higher your HP, the bigger this window is going to be for you. Okay, we've gone over that. We've gone over your spellbook and ability. Any spells that are not on your bar will be under your spellbook and abilities. This will be your general spells, regardless of what spec you picked. This will be your spec-specific, including your mastery, which for a monk is extremely important. Your abilities deal 10% damage when they're extra damage when they're not a repeat of the previous ability. So, with only one exception, you're going to always be switching up your abilities and never doing the same thing twice. The only exception to this rule is endgame Blackout Kick. You're going to be repeating that sometimes 2 to 3 times in a row just to get your Rising Sun Kick and your Fist of Fury off cooldown. But other than that, Everything else is going to be back and forth. So it'll be like uh, Tiger Palm, Rising Sun Kick, Fist of Fury, Whirling Dragon Punch, Blackout Kick, Tiger Palm, and back and forth Tiger Kick, Blackout Palm until your main cooldown, damage cooldowns come up. Um, so those are those. Your adventure guide will tell you a rough idea of what you should be doing, as well as the possible loot that comes out of each dungeon boss, what dungeons, guides to those dungeons, raids. So it's a really good resource. Back in the day, we didn't used to have this, like in vanilla times, but it's a fantastic resource for being able to say, like, okay, I'm going into battle for, now let's say I'm going to the Eternal Palace, and I don't know the boss fight of the first boss. It'll give you a nice rundown of, okay, what does this boss do? What do I have to be aware of as a DPS, as a healer, or as a tank? So as a DPS, I've got to mind this, this, and this. As an overview, what does he do? What are his abilities? These are the abilities. And what loot does he drop? Is there anything that I really need from this guy? So it'll give you a good idea. And so that's that. Your collections tab, which is just to the left of the adventure guide, will be where your mounts are, where your pets are, toys, heirlooms, and appearances. Heirlooms, if you know what they are, you probably have them. If you don't, you don't. It's gear that levels with you. So basically, people who've been playing the game for a while will buy these pieces and then just wear them on their alternate characters. Like I would probably equip them all on this character, for example, and they would give you certain benefits, like rested experience consumed is reduced, or increase out-of-combat regeneration, and then it's always got blue level stats on it, so they're always going to be good until they hit a certain point, in which case you have to upgrade them. Appearances, if you love to collect appearances, they're all the ones you've collected are all right here. So you can visit what's called a transmogrifier and go and get these appearances put on the gear, which will cost money, whatever gear you're wearing. So it won't change the stats, but it'll change the appearance for you, which is a whole lot of fun. You can look at all the different completed sets you've got, and then you can actually save different appearances if you want. Toys are novelty items that you've earned through certain achievements or certain things in the game that you've done. So, like, for example, Blazing Wings gives you this appearance for the next 15 minutes, and you get that from the Dark Moon Fair. Or if you've done Torghast up to, I think, Layer 4, you get this, etc. Pet journals, where all your battle pets go. You can essentially Pokemon battle with your battle pets. It's like WoW's minigame. All your mounts that you have all go here. So when you get riding skill, this is where you'll find them. And then this is you buy a certain item in the auction house, and it'll modify your mount to give it a certain effect. So let's say water walking, or slightly faster riding, or you can't get dazed, or etc. So you would equip that here, and that would just be applied. Okay. Achievements are here, and achievements are basically just feats of strength. So I shouldn't say that because that's a part. Achievements are basically when you do certain things, it earns you progress towards these certain achievements, and you can always see which ones are available and what you have to do to get them. Certain ones have rewards, certain ones don't. So, like, for example, this one, if you do what's listed here, you get a title, Defender of the Shattered World. Some are more significant. So, raid achievements usually reward with a mount. So, the one in Icecrown Citadel in the Wrath of the Lich King content gives you, if you get all those achievements, a Blood-Bathed Frostbrood Vanquisher, which is a bone dragon. So that one's achievable within 2 weeks, because there's a certain achievement in there that would require 2 weeks of work. So that's basics on achievements. Gone over that, gone over that. All right. And so just the gameplay basics for a monk is high mobility. You're basically going to be using Crackling Jade Lightning to pull a target if pretty much only if your Flying Serpent kick is on cooldown, or at the beginning of the game like we are here. So I can pull him towards me. It does consume energy. I would Tiger Palm, Rising Sun kick. Tiger Palm would come back off cooldown once I get enough energy to use it, and then Blackout kick again. Like I said, Rising Sun kick does a lot more damage than anything else, so focus on that. All right, and next time we're going to be going over a little bit more complicated things. This is just a nice basic overview of starting the game as a Windwalker monk. Thank you so much. See you next time.